What's up, guys? Welcome back to Boost Brothers Garage. My name is Mike, if you don't already know. It's been a while since we posted a video, but we are finally back with David's Time Attack 240SX. Done an obscene amount of work to this thing over the last year, so much so that we haven't been posting any content. But hey, we're back, got more videos coming, and I'm going to hand this over to David to give you an update on what's been done so far.
To get everyone up to speed, I bought a bone stock 240SX when I was in high school, and having never worked on cars, I decided to ruin it. Last year, I caged it and prepped it for GRIDLIFE Time Attack for Steet Mod. Having never raced on track, I ran at Gingerman and got a 143, so I was pretty proud of myself. Then I managed a 138 at Mid-O and thought, wow, everything's going great. I had some plans for the winter that were just to add aero to the car to make it more stable and install an LSD differential so I could actually exit corners without doing one-wheel peels. Then Road America happened. It all started the night before the race when I decided to turn up the boost just a hair to get an extra 10-wheel horsepower, and at Road America it broke. So don't fall for that temptation. So I was at a crossroads. Do I rebuild the SR so it doesn't happen again, or just go K-Series? I'll put some links in the description to those videos, but spoiler alert, I decided to go K because it's the way of the future.
The way of the future. The way of the future. The way of the future. The way of the future.
I thought I'd be able to easily do the K-swap over the winter. I've done an engine swap before. I mean, there aren't any off-the-shelf turbo manifolds for my turbo, but I can TIG. And I need a transmission solution, so why waste my money on anything other than a DCT? I've seen other people do that before. I can figure out the wiring, that's the hard part, right? That's what I'm good at. I can get a custom drive shaft made and make some custom transmission mounts. That shouldn't be too hard, working on jack stands on the floor. Came across a good deal on some CTSV brakes, and I thought, hey, might as well swap those too. I'll need some more brakes. Hawk's been super supportive. I know they can show me what pads and rotors to buy. The new engine and transmission needs, I probably am going to have to put a new ECU on it. I know PE is actually developing a new ECU, so why not just rewire the entire car? And if I'm rewiring the car, why use relays and fuses when I can just do a PDM and a CAN keypad instead of a bunch of switches? Oh, and why not do a drive-by-wire swap so I can do auto-blipping on downshift? See where I'm going with this? It kind of snowballed out of control. So let's get you guys caught up because I've been very, very busy this year. Let's start with a K-swap. I was really hoping KPowered Industries would just have a kit for the S chassis that I could just plug and play, but they don't yet. I want to give K-Power a big shout out because I bought a lot of K-Series parts from a lot of different companies in this whole process, and none fit as well as theirs, and I can't recommend their products enough. Their intake manifold is the gold standard, and there are a lot of parts floating around for cheaper that are just Chinese knockoffs of their hard work, so go to them first. For my build, the first thing I did was rip out the SR and started selling stuff to fund the build. I bought my first K-Series and started doing the weeks and weeks and weeks of research and parts buying and just trying to figure out a plan for everything I wanted to do. Unfortunately, many of the parts I bought took way longer than anticipated to find or just to show up even once I found them. But I guess everyone's feeling the COVID pain. I waited for months just for my TF oil pan alone. I tore down the engine to get it closer to final form and installed it into the car to start fabricating the exhaust manifold. There was a lot of contemplation to figure out exactly where I was going to put the turbo. Was it going to be top mount? Was it going to be bottom mount? But once I figured that out, I pulled the engine back out to actually fabricate the manifold on the engine stand, knowing precisely where I was going to put the turbo. When it was all tacked up, I sent it to my buddy John Rehack in Cleveland to weld it. I got the engine all refreshed and did a couple of conversions, like the VTC conversion, the oil pump, the water pump housing, and then I put it all back together when the oil pan finally arrived. Meanwhile, I was working on my DCT swap. For those that don't know, DCT stands for dual clutch transmission. It's a fancy transmission that has computer-controlled clutches and gears, and it's mostly reserved for high-end sports cars like GTRs, Porsches, and in my case, newer BMW. Being my first time working with the DCT, I reached out to Mike Dodge at Seems Legit Garage. He's been incredibly helpful. If you haven't heard of them, go check out their website. They make some pretty amazing parts, especially if you're a BMW owner or interested in DCT swapping. Some disassembly was required, and I ran into some road bumps along the way, like the transmission not being in neutral when it was taken out of the car. and needing some other modifications. Once I took the brains out of the transmission, which is called the mechatronics module, I had to break out the soldering iron and wire crimpers and completely rewire it. Then, before I could seal up all my work, I had to test it. But to test it, I needed the rest of the wire harness, and for that, I needed the engine and trans back in the car so I could make the wire harness. So once my Seems Legit Garage DCT adapter arrived, I mated the engine to the transmission and installed it in the car. Originally, I was going to make my own transmission mount, but I saw TF Works made one, so I thought I would try to get that. But it didn't fit right as it was designed for a different adapter plate. So this is a problem I still need to address. With the engine in, there were a lot of things I had to mount and plumb. So I spent a lot of time just looking and pondering, where's the best spot to put everything? Where am I going to mount all the trans coolers and oil coolers and radiator and intercooler? There's just a lot of things I had to figure out how to package. I contemplated doing a V-mount setup for a little bit, but decided to just keep it simple and just stack them and focus on one clean ducting solution. I decided to remove the flip-up headlights and actually run my intercooler piping through there to make them as short as possible. I also decided I was going to use the space behind where the fog lights would be for my air filter on one side and the catch can on the other. With everything decently organized and planned, I figured it's time to put on my plumber hat and make a bunch of AN hoses, lines, and pipes. One of the last pieces of the puzzle for the DCT swap was getting a custom drive shaft ordered, which meant the diff needed installed back in the car ASAP. So I refreshed the diff and installed the LSD, only to find out I had the wrong stub shafts. I did some homework and located and purchased an entire new diff, one from a non-ABS car, and did it all over again. Once the diff was finally in the car, I ordered the drive shaft and proceeded to have a panic attack when it arrived because the flanges didn't look right, but it's alright. It was just backwards. Now let's move on to the month-long black hole called wiring a car from scratch at the kitchen table. I don't remember much from this month other than the sound of the heat gun and the smell of hot heat shrink and my raw fingertips. Once the car was all wired up, I had to tear the engine out one more time, hopefully, fingers crossed, and do a valve test on the DCT so I could goop it all up and seal the electronics and torque down the flywheel and adapter. When I finally went to start the engine kept locking up and I was hearing some weird squirting noises in the trans. I assumed it was locking the engine up somehow, or maybe dragging on the clutches, even though I knew it was in neutral. I started troubleshooting the transmission, but then decided to just back up and see if it was a bad starter. With the new starter in, it started right up. But then I struggled for about a week just trying to get the thing into gear on jack stands. I got some support from HTG and new firmware solved that. So now the car is at PE sitting on the dyno, waiting for me to continue the tuning process of both the ECU and the transmission controller simultaneously, which should be challenging. And sprinkled in the middle of all this was a brake swap and aero. We got the wing mounted per the rules, and I'm just about done making all the supporting bracketry. The front splitter is cut out and just needs mounted. There's a lot of work to be done on the front end in general, mounting the bumper and the headlights and everything else in the front, as well as the ducting. I modified my front knuckles to accept the CTSV 6-piston brake adapters and was pretty set on using Hawk pads and rotors, as I trust their products, and the Hawk guys that show up to events and support racers are the best in the biz. They helped me select some DTC pads and a 2-piece DTC rotor combo. I just need to make a hat and find a hardware solution.
David, I think a lot of people probably want to know what the hell has been taking so long, because we were supposed to be posting videos on this months and months and months ago. A lot of people have commented asking for updates. So is it you? Is it sponsors? Is it supply chain issues? What's been going on?
Well, there's a little bit of supply chain issues throughout the way, but mainly it's just been I overestimated how much work I could get done as an individual. You know, doing the manifold all myself, doing the whole wire harness myself, pretty much doing this entire car myself. I think I just overestimated balancing a full-time job and building this thing. In addition to that, we have a brand new ECU going on this thing. This is going to be the first vehicle that the ECU has been used on, so it's developing an ECU while trying to tune a DCT, which are both kind of difficult things.
Yeah. So you bit off more than you can chew, like it seems like all of us do with builds. So you guys aren't alone out there. Anyway, thank you, David, so much for giving us an update. I'm really excited to move forward. You're headed out to SEMA next week. I'll be out there as well. We'll see you soon, right?
We'll see you there.
Later.